Anyway, what can I do? Let's go. So we are doing. I want to do something which is really interesting because I believe this is the Mafteach to truly understand davening. Now, this is a letter by the by you have. I hope you have the text. It's a letter of the right hand man, the secretary of the Lubavitcher Rebbe before the last, his father, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. So this is Chasidic Fagin was his right hand man. Now this was I think it was a quarterly that used to come out in Warsaw of Yeshivas Topchet Mimim of the Lubavitcher movement. Where he used to have Chassidus and Gemara and all. It was really very interesting thing to have. I actually have the collection, and I decided because he writes in the simplest way. He basically summarizes quite a few ideas and Kuntresim fired by the different Rebbes. After we read this, I will show you how all this lies in a letter of the Balatanya, explaining, what are we doing when we daven? And there's something I've come to a conclusion quite a while back. I've tried to teach it to my students now also. Like, no one teaches you what davening is about. You know what you're doing, and I go to shuls and I see what it's like. It's a problem. And I think this is very important. Just for small reference, if anybody owns a book called Likutei Morim Tanya, so there's in the back, there's a thing called Kuntres Acharon. And there's a small ma'amar called Hinei Lo Tova Shmoah, where he describes what he thinks davening should be. And so anybody can get a hold of it. I'll show it to you after we finish this article. So I want to read this together with you. I think it's quite clear, because I think this is like a tzalas nefashis. So let's start. Well, it all starts with one issue. We all know that in Sefer HaMitzvos, in Mitzvah Vav, I think it is, the Rambam says that tefillah is a mitzvah deraisa. Daily tefillah is a mitzvah deraisa. As to how to say it, that's the Rabbanan, but daily tefillah is deraisa. That's the pasuk of Avodah. Avodah Shebalev zat tefillah. The Ramban and almost everybody else, the Tashma, the Tzemach, they all think that that's not true. The only time tefillah is deraisa, biblical, is only be'es Tzara. If your mamish needs something, okay? Your mamish needs something. For example, if you have a sick person in the family and you're praying, that's a tefillah deraisa. When we prayed for the Shvuyim, that's a tefillah deraisa. When we say Achenu, when we all really meant, we said Achenu, that was a tefillah deraisa. And so on and so forth. Hopefully, if you make the mishaber for Chayalei Tzal, that's a tefillah deraisa. A mishaber for Chaylim is a tefillah deraisa. But Stam, as I say, make sure there's rain in Israel when you're living in Los Angeles. And that's probably just more traditional. That's more that's good. That it's a tefillah. You recognize that rain comes from God, but according to most Rishonim, that would be a drabana. Most Rishonim, that would be a drabana. So that's all what we're talking about. So let's look what it says over here. So he writes, "He neighbor mamar shorish mitzvahs tefillah." That's a very big article of 41 chapters. May Admor from the Admor at Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek was a goinim. There's 6 volumes of Tshuvas of him and Pesukei Halacha. This was a tremendous ilui. Nitfas b'sefer derech mitzvah b'tchilasa, and this is what he writes. Isa b'shayrish mitzvah tefillah yesh machloket, in the root of the mitzvah tefillah there's a discussion, an argument actually, bein haposkim, between the halachic decisions, imu mid'oraisa, whether it's a biblical commandment or midrabbanan, or it's a rabbinic dictum. Hinei, behold, Roiv Mainei mitzvahs. Most of those who wrote books on the county of mitzvahs, which are the Rambam, the Tashma, the Tzemach, those are big. That's the major players. Helu, they came up with a conclusion that tefillah b'chol yom, that daily davening, and nusach tefillah, obviously the nusach tefillah, which is basically comes from Achik Nesek Doyle with Ezra Sofer. He mitzvah d'Rabbanan, that's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. The daily davening that you go, it's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. Ach mid'oraisa, he a mitzvah sheyitpalel adam v'yevakesh le'et b'nei yitim, not daily prayer, but when at times when they're in need, asher yitztarech davar min advarim, If you have a problem with parnasa and you want to pray for parnasa, so you say Baruch Aleinu. You have a court case and you want to make sure the judge is not going to be who knows what, so say Ashiva Shivteinu. If you think you need extra siyata d'shmai to understand the Taisvus, say Atachaynu Ladam Das. I actually believe that Shivena Vinlasar Secha is an Eis Tzara, and that Mishtam is a Tefillah Deraisa, and Slach Lonu Avinu, for goodness sakes, if you don't think it's your Eis Tzara, then you have a Tzara. But primarily, Slach Lonu Avinu should be a Din Deraisa for everybody, let's be honest. Okay, but we'll let that go for a moment. So this is what he writes. Azu mitzvah say Deraisa, Shetzivana Hashem Barach Bezeh. What did God command? God commanded, we was asked only from him that he should save us from whatever these things that we need. The idea behind it, it's one of the fundaments of faith. Through this he will know, he'll understand. That it is God, blessed be He, Levado, He alone, and no other power, Hamanhigo Lamo, which leads the world to Mashgiach, B'kol Pratei Briotav, and He supervises all the miniature of the different creatures. Chilo Levado Yachot Lo Sheh, the only one can help you is God, and that's what you're doing when you're praying. So he believes it's a mitzvah deraisa. It's not just a mitzvah deraisa tefillah. It's also a declaration of faith that you totally understand that you are the entity which is the source of it all. Now this is based on in the fifth principle of found in the Agdama of Birchos. If you look at Shmoneh Prakim, in the Mishnah in Chelek, in the last Perek of Sanhedrin. So this is what Shehula Vadoi Mashgiach Va'akol. That's the fifth Shorish of Emunah. That's what he's talking about. The tefillah is an expression of the fifth Yesod of your animamim. Okay, so that's what the Tzedek writes. So he writes that basically most think it's Rabbanan except for an Eis Tzara. Now here the question has to lie between you and me. What should naturally for an Oved Hashem, for a person who wants to grow in religion, be defined as an Eis Tzara? Is it only an Eis Tzara Begashmius or also an Eis Tzara Beruchnius? And the fact that it's not an Eis Tzara Beruchnius is something which we should pray of. That is a problem. You're in a hole. One has to ask carefully, what is the Eis Tzara? If you don't think you're an Eis Tzara, if you're quite complacent with going to a minyan, that if you breathe, if you have asthma, you'll never finish on time, because by the time you finish Baruch She'amar, they will be at the end of Gal Yisrael. If you don't understand, you're an Eis Tzara, you got yourself a problem. We're always
in a hole. We're always praying for something.
I'm talking about, some people, most of Shmoneh Esreh, they're not really in an Eis Tzara. They don't have a problem with Ashiva Shivteinu at this stage. I don't think that you are really all day thinking, I made you duress because the system of jurisprudence is not the Sanhedrin. Do you really suffer from that? Do you need it at this stage? Is that true? Is it true that you miss Binyan Yerushalayim in a way that's an Eis Tzara for you? We're talking Eis Tzara. That's an interesting question. If you mamish miss Jerusalem and your mamish dying for the Malchus of David, you want to get rid of your democracy and have a monarchy, then you say a Tzemach David Avtra Meret Tzemach, and you really mean it. I'm not sure that I would suggest that most of Shmoneh Esreh is not an Eis Tzara for most people. Halavai, it should be. I totally agree with you. Halavai, Ashivenu, at least Ashivenu, and Slach Lanu should be an Eis Tzara. I'm not sure it is. I'd rather leave it in that fashion, not say things, my name isn't Amil Zola, and I'm not going to go say j'accuse, you know what I mean? I'm not going to start pointing fingers in the world. But yeah, this is an issue. This is the issue. To what extent is your tefillah, your life an Eis Tzara, which therefore constitutes the tefillah deraisa? There's a big nafkamina. Hine, ma'anachat alazot, from this basic understanding, yitzeh lanu musag b'mehut tefillah. By understanding that tefillah is based on Eis Tzara, and that's deraisa, this will give us a footing in the essence of the mitzvah of tefillah. Ki guva mitzvah deraisa, the basic mitzvah, biblical mitzvah is when man is in angst, he's in dire straits, yitzerlo, he's in narrow straits. That's what it means. You'll be constricted. Thus he's deficient of something. Yivakesh Hashem Barach, he will ask from God, blessed be He, Ki Azor, he should help him, be a Malech, Yisrael, and he should fulfill that which he's missing, that which he needs. So the real thing on the table is, you said such a beautiful thing. We all are praying for things that we need. I agree. Okay, yeah, but most of it's going to run around Baruch Aleinu, I need more money, or I need health. Yeah, health is very good. There's no bracha, there's no tefillah there for nachas from the kids. Okay, maybe that goes into the Rafeinu Hashem v'nei Rafei. I'm not sure. All about health. It's about health and wealth. That's what it's about. Oh, maybe Sim Shalom, the pursuit of happiness. Okay, but here's the question. It's because this is a bakash of Tzara, so there's no way it can be said you must do it at any specific time or a different way of saying things. You pray to the extent that things you're deficient of it. So it makes sense that when you feel something which is missing, at that time you express your feelings in your way to put it down into a ritual that everyone says the same thing. But I mean this in these words. That is not what the din deraisa is. The din deraisa is self-expression of a subjective deficiency. Rambam says the reason being in Hilchos Tefillah, because people at that point of time in Babylon had lost the Hebrew, the language based the Aramaic. Even worse, it was more like it's like in Brooklyn they speak English. It's like Yiddish speak. It was not a Lashon Naki, and they felt it's not proper. You're talking to Kadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to go visit the king today. This I don't know about him. The queen, Zechreina Livracha. You practiced your English. You spoke eloquently. You spoke perfectly out of respect. Okay, so people simply did not master the language and did not know the rhythm of language. So they gave them a basic rhythm of language for them to express your feelings in proper articulation. That's what the Rambam writes in the beginning of Hilchos Tefillah. That's what Ezra and Anshei Knesset Gdola did. Okay, but that does not take away from that's what if you want to be Mekayim Deraisa in that, you really have to put yourself in there. It's got to be some expression of my necessities. That's the key idea behind that here. Okay, in other words, when you say Baruch Aleinu, because the Lashon Tefillah is Lashon Rambam for Klal Yisrael, that won't be the deraisa. The deraisa will be, it means for all of them, Bani b'saycham, because I need this. So you may be adding, I guess most people do too, but at the end of the day, it has to be you're expressing your necessities and talking to God about what you need. One really has to try to understand, why did Chazal do this? Right, B'Lashon Rabbim at specific times and a certain liturgy. Here he says a very interesting truth. Kol takanot Chazal, all takanos of Chazal, they don't just make things. If they would just make something new, it would be Bal Taisif. That's a Mefurshir, Rabbeinu David Ben Phil in Sanhedrin and a Rambam in the Akdama. Basically to protect the perimeters of a din deraisa, Oneness, which is fulfilling a religious value, to be murdered to Kadosh Baruch Hu ala nes. It's not a mitzvah deraisa. Anyone that thinks it's a mitzvah deraisa, they should check his Gemara. What it is, it's a major religious value expressing Avos Hashem and Emunah about Kadosh Baruch Hu. As I mentioned in different classes, there are certain things that God left out of the realm of commandment, expecting you to do it as a value. We discussed this multiple times in the past. As we know that a commandment you fulfill the obligation just with mechanical activity. To fulfill a value, that means he expects you to identify with it. So actually, it's quite demanding to fulfill biblical values. So one of the biblical values is Shira. For example, we learn the idea of Halal al Oneness, talking again, Chodesh Iyar, from the Shira al Yamsuf. Now, was there a Vaydav Hashem and Moshe Lemar sing Shira at the Yamsuf? No. Was the Shira al Yamsuf a key mitzvah deraisa? No, there was no mitzvah. There was no commandment. I read my Bible multiple times. There's no commandment. And we learned the din of Halal al Oneness from the Shira al Yam. Well, that wasn't a commandment, and this Kal V'chaimer said this is also not a commandment. What was that? An expression of Avos Hashem, Emunah b'Hashem, an appropriate thing to do, and therefore Kal V'chaimer, it is appropriate to do also that. I want us to understand what this is. To say that this is a mitzvah deraisa is I really don't begin to understand how there's certain rabbinic figures that think it is. I'm totally clueless on that. I honestly don't think it is, at least as much as I know my Gemara. Anyway, so going back to that, Chazal don't just make things up. They have to be either Zikar and Anes, because that's going to be it'll be a Siag deraisa. For example, the Rambam writes, what is the idea of saying of reading the Megillah? He says the idea of the Megillah is basically to fortify the belief that Karav Hashem l'chol kairav l'chol asher kra'u be'emes. That's what the Rambam writes in the Minyan Mitzvahs in the beginning of the Yad. The purpose is to fortify your belief in the fact of Hashgacha v'Kadosh Baruch Hu, and Hakadosh Baruch Hu actually listens to our prayers. That's what he writes. That is the major purpose of the Takana of Krias Megillah. Interesting to know that. Okay, it's not to make you fight Amalek. The Amalek isn't around exactly. You can't actually fight him. But the idea is, and if there wouldn't be that would be Baal Taisim. We have to have, so there has to be a reason why they did. Now, what was the reason they added a mashal? That I can understand the language. Okay, but why dafka this time of the day, that time of day, that time of a day? It's very nice that it's connected to karbanis, but what's the heter? Just a minute. What's the heter for them to do this? It's Baal Taisim. If it's not a siag and not a gather, what's the heter? What's the heter for shalish pam b'yayim? Who was matter them to do this? They made a new halacha, which is not a deraisa, not an extension of deraisa. It's a prasta Baal Taisim. That's the question. I can understand the language. It's get a siag because people don't know how to daven, so they decide to put up a liturgy. This I can understand. Okay, but what about zmanim? It's a prasta. What is this? That's the question he's asking. Amna nusach atfir yesh tam b'pashut lias kilo kol adam kolcho v'dato yefer daber lifnei hamelech. B'frat lifnei melech ma'achem lachim yizbarach. This is what Rambam says. Asher lo dumiyat tehila. It's actually, if you can't say it properly, keep your mouth shut. That's lo domiyat tehila. The Chazal say mi yamalel gvurs Hashem yashmiya kol tilaso. Who can say the gvurs of a Kadosh Baruch Hu? He who knows how to say has the total picture of his praise. If you know kol tilaso, so you can say gvurs Hashem. We are not people that can. So Ezra Sefer put it together, as Reb Chaim Volozhin says, that all the Kavanas, the proper Kavanas of Tefillah, are put in those words. It covers kol gvurs Hashem. Again, tiknu nusach kavua shavel chol nefesh, kolel kol tzor bnei adam v'mayivi. I'm going to take out tefillah b'choyem, but why every day? And why 3 times a day? Why every day? Me'echitesi. The whole idea of tefillah is all these what? Is because midiraisa is only based Tzara. Why were they misakin tefillah every day? I understand the nusach, as we said before, that's beginner siag v'geder to help you fulfill a mitzvah deraisa. But why every day? If the ikar din is a Tzara, why were they mechadish a new din tefillah, which is not a Tzara? That's the question he asked, and it's a very serious. This is actually a question which is inferred already in a letter of the Balatanya, but let's just leave it. Od yesh la'avim, we must also understand mazeh shekashu chazal tefillah kriyat shra berchotea. Why did they connect prayer, which we know, stam prayer is Shmoneh Esreh, right? We know that by now. And they put it together with Kriyat Shema and its brachas. We're always Saimech Geula L'Tfila, okay? And the whole idea of Geula, the Birchos Kriyat Shema, are part of the Kriyat Shema. Ki yadur, the halacha is that if you have normally a suffix of a bracha, is the Kula. But the brachas of Krias Shema, if you were a suffix whether you did Krias Shema or not, so you have to say it together with the brachas. So Rabbeinu Yonah says, because Rabbanan said that's the only way you can fulfill Kriyat Shema properly. And Bechlal, what's the purpose of the brachas? What exactly are the purpose of the brachas which surround Kriyat Shema? Why it seems to be according to Rabbeinu Yonah and the Halacha, Chazal understood that this is the way you can fulfill the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. It's not just a added bracha. These brachas, which are Birchas HaShvach, they're not Birchas there's no bakasha there. It's purely kula Birchas HaShvach. What it seems to be, you put the after Kriya Shema surround, bookended by this. This will gives a different understanding of what you're supposed to attain with Kriya Shema. What is that? Okay, but it's very clear. And then they said this at Kriya Shema and its context has to be together with Shmoneh Esreh. He also adds, what about Pesukei de Zimra? Dimul is an old Pesukei de Zimra. We know this is a latter-day development. Originally, even Bizman HaTanoim, Pesukei de Zimra was not legislated. The Gemara says, there were special people which said Pesukei de Zimra, which is Gamri Halal B'chol Yom, the Pesukei de Zimra, the Halal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on the beauty of creation and how everything depends on God. You read your Pesukei de Zimra carefully. Okay? It is funny that I see people that are mocked with Damish when Esreh with Kavana and Pesukei de Zimra, they don't mind doing it rat-tat-tat-tat. You know what I mean? You got it all wrong, brother. You know what I mean? You can't say Birchas Kriya Shema properly until you did Birchas Pesukei de Zimra properly. And then finally you'll be able to be Oimed Lifnei HaMelech and do Shmoneh Esreh properly. What is it? What is the ladder here? Serving him with your total sense of emotion and focus. That's what the heart is. We discussed that in the past. When we say L'avdo b'chol levavchem, well, the heart is a muscle. What do we mean when we say L'avdo b'chol levavcha? V'aftas Hashem b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol modeh. What does L'chol levavcha mean? Okay, without the drushes. Just the pshuta shamikra. With your whole heart. What's my heart? It's a pump. And the answer is because that pump basically was perceived in ancient times and also to the primitives of today as having the source of feeling, which is really not true. Okay, your nerves ends are not in the heart and don't come from the heart. Your heart, but though, is an indication of your excitement and total focus because then you need more oxygen for your brain cells and therefore it pumps more, so your pulse races. So that people understood that feelings come from the heart. The truth of the matter, the feelings come from the brain, if you really want to know, from the nervous system, which starts with the brain. But in order to facilitate that you shouldn't faint, the heart moves over time in order to pump more oxygen into your brain cells. We all went to high school, so we all know this. Therefore, Avodah b'chol levavcha means with your total emotional involvement and focus. That's what it means. Okay, so what is the idea of serving God with your total emotion and focus? This is Avodah Shebalev Zat Tefillah. So what does it mean? The Ikar Tefillah is not the words. The Ikar Tefillah is the Avodah. What is exactly the Avodah Shebalev in Tefillah? Who of us has ever felt that he's doing Avodah Shebalev? What is the Avodah Shebalev? What Avodah are we supposed to be doing when we daven? This is the question on the table. Where is the avodas Hashem in the lev more than anything else? What to do a mitzvah with kavana? Every mitzvah could be done with kavana. Tefillah also has a din of dibur. So what is the avodas Shebalev? Seems to be part of what tefillah is, essentially part of tefillah, not just an added factor. Kavana of a mitzvah is an added factor. The kavana of tefillah, which will include midrabanan, Pesukei de Zimra, Birchas, Krias, and Shmoneh Esreh, that's called Avodah Shebalev. What's the Avodah? What do we call? I don't know. Maybe you experienced it. This is for me. This was. I remember when I saw this when I was like 13. It was like it opened up my eyes. Hinei al pi yesod ma'amarei Chasidut, through multiple ma'amarim of Chasidus of the Rebbes and Kuntresim of Seinu Agdashim. There are two Kuntresim on Tefillah, two monographs on Tefillah written by Reb Shalom Dov Ber Shneerson, which was he was a contemporary of Reb Chaim Brisker. He passed away young at the age of 57. He was the the father of Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, which was the father-in-law of this past Rebbe, the Menachem Mendel Schneerson. So he was a brilliant man, really a brilliant man. So he has two Kuntresim on Tefillah, one Kuntres on Tefillah and the other Kuntres on Avodah. Halavai, we'd have koyach to learn that. That would be unbelievable. It's near, it says over there, Ki be'emes, pnimis inyan atfila. What is the core of tefillah? It's not the words. Hu is bainanus, it's contemplation. V'ha'kora, and recognition equals totally understanding. Bigdulasa yizbarach, the greatness of God. You stand and fire, you say these words, the idea is to contemplate them and think about them, probably before and during and after. That what? He is he who brings everything into existence at all levels of consciousness. Olamot does not mean the globes, doesn't mean the planets, it means levels of consciousness. Malachim are not spatial. So they have the oilam of malachim, oilam on neshamas, oilam haba. These are not spatial realities. These are levels of consciousness. So we understand ech shebara kol olamot and kol nivraim umechayev tam tamid. Not only do they bring them from naught into being, which is mehaveh, he also sustains their existence constantly. Now you have to think about that for 2 minutes. I'm looking at a cup of coffee. God is infinite, and whatever the process is, moved from infinity into a finite expression of self, and that finite expression lies in the fact that I now have a cup with coffee in it, and not just did he bring that into being, every iota of time, he's willing it to continue. We discussed this multiple times. That's the pshat where you say, "I'm a chadish betuvay b'chol yoim tamid ma'aseh v'reishis." The creation is an ongoing, perpetual flow. It is not that something happened X amount of years ago and now it's continuing. It's not linear. It's dot, 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 dot. We discussed this. So he says this is the primary kavana. When you do Pesukei Zimra, what are you saying? He's ma'aveh kol olamot of Anivrahim, mechayeh tam tamid. Not only did he bring them from naught from infinity into finite, but actually he sustains that existence. In other words, there's an ongoing, as the pasuk says in Tehillim in Kuf Yutes, Lo'olam Hashem Dvarcha Nitzav B'Shamai. And this is a man made of Lo'olam Hashem, forever God. Dvarcha Nitzav B'Shamai. And this is already a medrash in Tehillim that God said Yehi Or. He is constantly saying Yehi Or, and that's why there's light. When God, he is now saying Nasa Adam, and that's why you exist. That's what's happening here. So this is, he says, that's called Mahaveh Mechayev Tatamid Manhigam. He leads us. Yes, he runs the show. You are pawns on his chessboard. Umashgiach al kol echad ve'echad b'ashgacha pratis. This is true. Well, according to the Chasidic doctrine, it's true for Doimim Tzomei Chai Medaber. We who live with Rabba Rishonim is specifically only Medaber, and it depends on levels of your sanctity. We learned that in the past. Whatever it is, so what I'm getting here is literally the Yesodos found in the Ramban at the end of Parshas Bo. He's the Mehaveh, Mechayeh, Manhig, Umashgiach. Those are the 4 things I'm looking for. I want to walk out of Pesukei Zimra with internalizing total having that image in front of my mind. And if not, you didn't say it. And actually, if you do say it, yeah, it's there. Okay, Mechayeh, Mehaveh, Mashgiach, and Manhig u'Mashgiach. This is basically the theme, the ongoing theme of Pesukei Zimra. Hey, brother, look at who brings the frost. What do you mean? The weather. No, God brings the frost. You just said no. You just said no. It's God that brings the. Who feeds the animals? Did you say Baruch Nafshi and Rosh Chodesh? Read it. It's him feeding the ants and the lions and the giraffes. And you read it. Read all of read. Who clothes the destitute? What do you mean? No, God. He makes sure that this happens. You realize what you do. If you reach Shmoneh Esreh, Pesukei Zimra, you realize you're making movements. It's all up to he runs the show. Read Pesukei Zimra seriously. That's what he said. It's very clear that the Kavana Pesukei Zimra is to walk out of there with a total feeling of mehaveh, mechayeh, manhig, umashgiach. And after you came out of Pesukei Zimra, which is and to say this in 5 minutes, because after 8 minutes you're already by Baruch Hu, if I recall, I davened in Bergenfield. You know what I mean? It doesn't work that way. No, the Rebbe writes in a letter to Balatanya that he doesn't understand how Shacharis in a regular weekday for Balabatim can be less than an hour and a half. That's what he writes in the letters at the back of Tanya. He says that's the minimum. Okay, of course, it should take a good 25 minutes just to say Pesukei Zimra. If you're looking and trying to see each pasuk there, is it the mechayeh, is it the ma'aveh, is it the manhig, the mashgiach? Just, I've told you once in the past, just thinking what the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei means. You say it. What does the word Yud Kei Vav Kei mean? So the Ramban says in Parshas Yisro, we learned this, Hoveh Kadmon, the primary existent, Shemimenu Hakol, that all is expression of him, Bechefzo v'yocholto. Now, there's 19 times of that name in Yichavod. Has anybody stopped 19 times to contemplate? You said Baruch Atah Yud Kei Vav Kei. What are you saying? You are literally repeating 19 times. Here you have the Mahaveh. The Mahaveh lies literally in the word Yud Kei Vav Kei. But how many people do you know do that? But that's the Ikar Adin. That's the Ikar Tefillah. Okay? Baruch Ata, as you know, the Chinuch writes in Parshas Ekev, you are the source of everything. It's not Baruch, I bless you. It's not that people should, it means Baruch Ata is a statement that is found also in Chuvas Rashba, also in Kada Kemach of Rabbeinu Bechaya, and his Pirush on topics on Erech Bracha, also in his Pirush in Parshas Ekev, in on Chalta V'Savota Ve'rachta. I'm quoting quite a few Rishonim here. I'm not mentioning Latter-day Saints. Ramban, Rashba, Chinuch, very important, Chinuch. Avudraham, student of the Tur, in the beginning of Psicha of Hilchas Bracha, he writes specifically, Baruch is a Toar. You're describing a Baruch Ata. You are the source of all ribui, all the source of all multiplication. Everything comes from you. Rashi writes from Furshin Tshuva, when you say Baruch Ata, you're saying you're the source of everything and you need nothing. You're the giver and not the taker. It's called Mechayeh u'Mehaveh. You're the source of everything. And it's up to you to decide who's going to get what and when. That's the Mashgiach and that's the Manhig. That's if you understand what you're saying. So this takes time. You don't just roll through this. So he says, after you finally get to that stage of understanding, you've internalized that. That's a process. It's a process of internalizing this, not just saying it. What emotions would you have if this would be, what would you feel if you really felt that, wow, this is like, nothing has any meaning outside of God's will, and he's unbelievable. This great God cares about me. Okay, I'm a little nothing. If I look at the galaxies, what am I? I'm less than a speck of dust in the great cosmos. I mean, you know, we know we should know our development of astronomy. The globe is a speck of dust compared to the cosmos, and then the Jews are even less. And he did all this because he wants Adam, the Homo sapiens, specifically the Nefesh Yisrael, to be Moide Elav Dehu Barai. That's the Lashon Ramban. That all Tachlis Kol HaBriya V'Chol HaMitzvahs She'eda Adam Shakel Baro V'Yodelo Akach. He should live with that acknowledgement. Ramban, the end of Parshas Bos, that is the purpose of all of Torah and mitzvahs and all of creation, to create lower levels of consciousness equals me, you, and our friends. That we should live with a constant acknowledgement that we are created forms of his will and it's his show. That's the purpose of it. So when I daven Pesukei Zimra, if I internalize that, I'm justifying my existence. As I always tell my students, brother dear, you owe your mother a big debt. You were colicky. And you know what? I was. Okay. I mean, and her morning sickness, that was terrible. You know what I mean? Well, you had to justify that. The only way you can justify your mom's morning sickness and the fact she had sleepless nights, if you're dash akel barachava modelo al kach. That was the purpose of your being. But if you're just eating hamburgers and saying whatever that means, you know what I mean? There's no tzedakah for your Torah and mitzvahs and anything. After you retain that consciousness, and I repeat, that's an avodah kosher shebamigdash. Because the more you learn the Rishonim and ultimately even go deeper into Midrashim, etc., understand the depth of what these words Pesukei mean, and to understand the depth of what it means, the infinity expressed stuff from finite. That's a very cold statement. But there's tons of literature in Jewish, in primary sources, which deal with this, with the different process of the tzimtzumim from the ayin to the yesh. There's a back and fill libraries with all this. The more you learn this, the deeper you understand it, and the profounder you understand it. It takes years of training. Your Pesukei looks different. And you actually somehow have an iota of, you become thirsty for him. It's literally the lashon of the Rambam, Bishashi Makiyeda, what the Rambam says. Rambam says, Ketzad derech la'avato. Bishashi is bonena adam b'masav u'bru'av ha'niflaim v'agdolim. V'yireh b'em chachmato, she'en lo erech v'lo ketz. He sees, wow, the wisdom of God, the complexity, and the infinite God cares about it. Made this beautiful world. For what? For you? Like, why did he make an orange? You see, my mother used to love me eating oranges. She couldn't stand me eating apples. Because oranges are like a yekem made it. There's slices there. It's perfect. You know what I mean? It's like you don't grab an orange and bite into it. You take a slice and a slice. The peel is aesthetic. You peel it and it's very nice. You can still leave it there. An apple, you eat like, you munch it. This is my mother. She was from Germany. She appreciated oranges. That's the pshat when you say b'chein, b'chesed, v'rachman. It's with chein. God cares about how things are presented. You see how beautiful it is? Why would he care? And he cares about you and your feelings and what kind of person you'll be. And you're a speck of dust. And what did it take for an infinity to finally arrive to John Doe living in Bergenfield or Los Angeles or wherever it only be? That whole process ends up with you. The purpose of creation is not the balachim, not the srafim. The purpose of creation is the adam atachtem, olam asiya, sheyeda adam shakel baro v'yodelo al kach. The purpose of reality is us. We're the slum. We're the bottom of the barrel, and that's the purpose. So let's get this straight. So we had some Pesukei there is after we attain that appreciation, at whatever level you try your best. The next stage is what is Birchas Krias Shema. Now, what are you doing in Birchas Krias Shema? Hidbonenut b'pratei nivraim d'tzva mala. Here you contemplate the different types of malachim. I don't want to say anything, but does anybody learn Tov the Nevi'im and Yeches to understand the difference of Srafim and Eifanim? Move their wheels and there's burned up. Thank you. What does it mean? The Chazal told us to say these psukim. The Navi says these psukim. This is Torah Shebiksav, okay? Eifanim, Srafim, all psukim in Yecheskel or in Yeshayahu, and no one bothers to know what it is. And as Anshik Nesadeh or Masak, this should be done specifically before Kriyat Shema. And why? Because the Torah says after you discussed the Nivroim Haktanim, now you understand what does it mean, Tzva Mala. And then after you understand what Tzva Mala is, you understand what a sarf is, what an oifan is, what chayasak, or the holy animals. There was the animals. They were a good group when I was growing up. Good music. You know what I mean? The house of the rising sun, if you want to know. Okay, but this is the holy animals. Yeah, I think it sounds like my class, the Chayis HaKodesh, holy Chayis. But that's not what it means. So what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm not even asking. I know that none of us understand what this is unless you sat down and learned it. This is sugyas. We're not davening. The purpose of davening is appreciating exactly the terms and understanding what this is supposed to teach you. And this is what he says. He says, Birchas Krias ve'izbaininus beprate anivroim d'tzva maila. Gdulasam ma'alatam. What is the mile of A over B? And ultimately looking at them, and they are batel lebayir mizbarach. What does that teach me? Look at them, and they feel naught, and you feel you're somebody. This is the biggest sheer in humility you can think about. You have bakashas? These guys just have only one bakasha. I am a kohen kvoida. It's all they care about. And they're bato. What's shrafim mean? You know what shrafim means? That every time they come close to understanding, they feel nothing. They're nisraf. They're nichla. I am b'malbim. If you learn malbim and yecheskel, and maybe we should learn navi. Maybe we should. I don't know how you can daven without knowing navi. But this is prate anivraim. This for malak dulasam malasam ubitulam lebayram yisbarach. And they feel it totally annulled. I once, sometimes I just look at there are certain books that make you feel that you don't know a thing. I'm not that stupid, and have read quite a few tomes in my life of the Babylonian, Jerusalem Talmud, and whatever other Jewish stuff there. I have to open one piece of Chazon Ish, and I feel like a little, like a Lilliput compared to Gulliver, like a Yingala, a garnished. I feel butto. Standing in front of the Chazon Ish has got, and I don't feel that way with a lot of other important swarm. But every time I open the Chazon Ish, I feel like, like he took the air out of my balloon. And he felt the same way when he read a Gra. I read what he describes. In other words, I don't begin to understand what the Gra was because I can barely understand the Chazon Ish. So I can't even appreciate what the Gra was. The Chazon Ish probably, with his hekef of Yiddish, could appreciate the Gra. And he was buckled kapov. He had no sense of self when he discussed the Gra. I feel just about the same way when I look at the Chazon Ish. I'm bottled. Now think of this, I'm thinking about. So it says, I don't know what the Gra is. I know one thing, that the Chazon Ish is bottled the Gra, and I don't begin to know what he is. I don't know what a Tana is. I just know I don't know what a Tana is. I read them, I learn them a lot. I know, that the Amirayim say, Rishonim bil malachim anu kibnei adam, im Rishonim bnei adam anu k'chamayrim v'lo k'chamar shepirchas ben yoyer. If they are perceived, if that's what Adam means, the Tana, then we are nothing more than a bunch of asses, donkeys, and not intelligent donkeys like Birchas ben Yoyer's donkey, which at least knew what Tevel was and what Meiser was. We're really dumb jackasses. That's what we are. Okay, this is what the Amiroim said when I don't know what an Amir is. I look at that and I understand. So what do I look at when I see a Rajba? I can try to understand the words, but I can't encompass the persona because the Gra was scared of them. And I don't know what the Gra was. I know what the Chazon Ish was, and he frightens me. That's the only one I can say I know. I read all his books, I read it all, and I know Mamish, he frightens me. I'm not joking when I say that. I'm not frightened of a Briskarav. Even Reb Chaim doesn't frighten me. No. Chazon Ish frightens me. Okay, he frightens me. Pasha frightens me. You understand what I'm trying to say? So this is the same thing. I look at what I say, Birchas Krias, if I'm misbeinin, I learn ba'oimik, what's a soraf, what's a chaysa kodesh. And I understand exactly what this one says, and this one says kodesh, kodesh. And what do those words mean? What does it express in their station of who they are? You understand? This is a very big sugya. To learn sugyas at tefillah, it's only if you learned it beyond you have, that's the purpose. So you never really get to the purpose of Birchas Krias until you really understand the prate milas how nivroim el yoinim and bitulam. And they're bittul expressed differently. One is Baruch Kvod Hashem Im Kaimei, the other is Kaddish, Kaddish, Kaddish. It's only then, that's the first bracha. What's the second bracha over there in Birchas Krias Shema? Ubracha shniya hashgacha v'akir pnimi b'miyuchad liYisrael. That's brachas Ahava Rabba, Ahava Soilam, call it what you want. So the first bracha is saying, this God, which believe me, these unbelievable, they have no sense of self. And that God, which they can't fathom, he cares about me and wants me to learn this book. I says, God, this is crazy. So, this is unbelievable. Like, would you believe it? He cares about you. I always tell people, you're never lonely, because there's one thing, if you're alive, that means he's thinking about you this time and wants you to be. That means what you do is important for him. Don't ask me why, it makes no sense. But he does. Okay? So this is that it says, and that's how, after understanding that he's the Mechayeh and Mahave, Mashgiach, and the Manik, and finally seeing the bittul klape HaKadosh Baruch Hu, feeling a sense of total naught compared to the gratitude to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, where you look at the Malachim, you look at the Srafim, you look at the Chayes HaKodesh, and Afal PK, and I'm Leslie a speck of dust, and he does care about me. And finally, you've basically rubbed away all your sense of ego and blown up image of self. You've scrubbed your face with ivory soap. That's what you've done by now. What's left of you is then you scream Yuchad Hashem Pasuk Krias Shema. What does that mean? What are you doing now? His baininus b'achdusai ha'amitis. What does the word amitis mean? Anybody learning Rambam, Perik Aleph Hilchos Torah, it means absolute. Rambam discusses, anybody learns, when you say Hashem Elokim Emes, Dvarocha Emes V'Kayim La'ad, doesn't mean it's the truth, not a lie. It means it's absolute existence. Read Rambam, the first 5 halachas in Perik Aleph Hilchos Torah. So you're talking about the absolute oneness of God. Equal, not one of numbers, not one that can be fractured. It's a pure oneness, which is a philosophical term. It's not the one of numbers, which is nothing more than the category of what you would call mathematically infinite fractures. But even the word infinite in mathematics is not really infinite. It's nothing more, as long as there's time and space. So you can fracture things. Take away time and space, there won't be numbers. Infinity is that which precedes time and space. The infinity of God is not the infinity of numbers. So when you say echad, that means the one not of numbers. That anybody daven the nusach edot hamizrach, but that you say originally patach Eliyahu, which is the akdama to the Kuntres, and so the nusach there is antu chad, you are one v'lo b'chushbon, but not the one of numbers. So when you say echad in Krias Shema, your Kavana should be, you are one, but not the one of numbers. You're pure oneness. Now, you know how much there's to learn about that and think about that? And that's the key of Mitzvah, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Anochi Hashem Elokecha is exactly that. You really have to learn your Mer Nevuchims, or you have to learn multiple other disciplines of Talmidei Rashba and Ramban, etc., which discuss these things at length. That's how you daven. Actually, what happens at the end after all this? So this is a progressive reality. First is the God which cares about me in Pesukei Zimra. Then finally there's the God which is so great that even Malachim v'Srafim, and I understand what they are naught. That's what it's against. You say, if you wouldn't, I tell you the Chaznish, but a young Bach which doesn't know what the Chaznish is, I just said nothing. But if you know what the Chaznish is, then you chop your bittul in front of the Gra. But first you have to know what the Chaznish was. For that, you have to learn Shas. It doesn't happen without that. So the same thing is here. It's only after you learn these sugyas be'iyun that you know what these psukim are saying. Then you can come to one unbelievable thing. What's the purpose of the whole spiel from Pesukei Zimra to Birchos Krias Shema to Krias Shema to get to the pasuk of V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha? Haftarah is not just a commandment, it's also a statement, as the Tzemach says, and you do this properly, Haftarah, and you will love God. You won't have any other sense of existence outside of him. Do you know there's no mitzvah to get yourself killed al Kiddush Hashem? What's the mitzvah? Show me a mitzvah that says get yourself killed. No. The mitzvah is love God to the extent that you won't be able to live with denying his existence. That's the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. These are aspects of God. It was love God like Romeo loved Juliet. Love God to an extent you can't live if living is without you. Alan, good number, right? It was a good song. Right? That's what it is. That's after the Shema Lokecha. Whoever got there. But that's the purpose. That's the purpose of the whole ladder. That's what you're doing. That's Pesukei Zimmer. That's Birchos, Krias, and Krias. How are you going to attain total appreciation for the oneness of God unless you understand that everything else is meaningless? And you've basically pointed out the even chayes of kodesh are batel. It's meaningless. They have no existence outside of his as much as he gives them existence. And as soon as they can't even comprehend who he is. And that's what we're talking about. That's the goal of davening. The goal of davening is basically appreciating the place of God in his relationship with creation and understanding, literally, if now you go back to the first 5 halachas in Tzara, describing exactly this process is described there in different language. And that's the purpose you're doing every day by davening. I hate to say it, is a sense of annulment of the I and seeing yourself in the whole world and creation as nothing more than an expression of the infinite God. And so he wills. Why is another question. We can deal with that some other times. It's called bittul. It's called appreciation. He's the manik, he's the boirer, he's the even the idea of time, of past, present, and future, is because he willed such a perception of reality. Should he stop willing it, there won't be time. There won't be a past, there won't be a present, there won't be a future. The whole idea will cease to exist. Lefizeh continues the next paragraph. What is the inner core of davening? I'm talking about Shacharis here. We even got the Mincha and Ma'ariv. Shacharis. In Yana ain't a mitzvah pratit. It's not just do a mitzvah like putting on tzitzis. This is basically internalizing the foundation of all of Torah mitzvahs. Total, everything, annulling everything in front of God and attaining Ahava v'yira. Ki arei limud Torah lishma. If you're doing limud Torah for the right purpose, we'll leave it at that. B'kiyam mitzvah lishma yizbarach. You're doing kiyam mitzvahs for the purpose of God's will and God lishma yizbarach. Be'emes, if it's supposed to be an absolute reality, not a wishy-washy something like it, hu dafka ayidei avos Hashem. It's only a person which has pure avos Hashem, which everything he does is done l'chvoida yizbarach. Everything is done for him. You say in Shmoneh every day, maybe goy livnei v'neim l'man shmo ba'ava. You say basically you understand the purpose of redemption is not you, and not the world. It's for his purpose. L'man shmo. It's his agenda. He brings redemption because not because we are nice, not because he wants to heal us, because he wants his name to be expressed. He wants this. He does it in a loving fashion, be Ahava. But the purpose is not because he loves you. The purpose is because he has an agenda, Leman Shemo. Anybody used to learning Yecheskel knows it's a constant theme where he says, Leman Shmi, V'loi Leman Chem, Amar Hashem. I'm not doing things for you. Whatever I'm doing for my purpose. But I'm doing it, but I care about you. I'm doing it lovingly that you should feel good about it. But the purpose of your existence is not you, but it's my agenda. This is what he says there. So they understand that the only way is Dafka de Avos Hashem ukemo shekasev betanya and Perek Lametes ki kemo shein Adam osa davar b'shul chaveroi elim came oyavoy. Why would I do things for somebody unless I care about him? Or or the opposite. I care about myself and I'm in awe of this person. Kach efshar asot l'shmoid brach ba'emes b'li zichroin v'yisayru sava. Unless you really have Avos Hashem, which means to say an obsessive desire for constant proximity, you will not be consistent in your religious behavior. Why we lack consistency in our religious behavior, and I will include all of us in it without feeling bad about it, because we don't have a obsessive desire for constant proximity with the Ein Sof, with God. It equals we're not engaging in bittul on ayesh. It's crazy. How do you want to daven if you really want to make sure there's maple syrup on your pancakes? How do you expect to daven if you care so much about Gashmis? It's the opposite of what davening is. We just described what davening is. How do you expect? Oh, Rabbi, I'm having a hard time davening. He says, yeah, of course, because you spent 5 minutes to make sure your tie is straight. Not because you want to look decent, because you want to look cool and suave. Okay, how much mind do you put into your chitzonius? What can I tell you? Al pize yuvim b'pshitus tam hatakona lispal b'choyom. That's why Chazal were masakin to daven every day. V'yoki yanat tefillah yisoid avodas Hashem. This is basically the foundation of any real avodah of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Yom yom b'limud haTorah v'kiyum mitzvahs. We naturally gravitate towards things which we need. We all go to work. Goodness sakes, this morning I spent from 9 until 12 doing right for Chaylim Semech Neiflim and Matir Asurim. I was, in my confessional booth dispensing Hail Marys, solving people's religious, psychological issues. That's what I do. Helping people, it's a very important thing to do, but I didn't think I was going to do that when I was teaching Gemara. But that's a big part of the job. Big part of the job. Creating people in their minds and hearts. The Gemara almost seems to be Irish, 20%. 80% of the deal. What are you talking about? So you understand, this is real tzrachim. People are pointing to different things to get to inyani ha'olam, and therefore they walk away from the tzarech hanefesh. V'yitzrim is gaber b'chol yom. Come on, every day there's new challenges. Al kein tzichim b'chol yom hatfilah. What for? L'kvah b'libo ha'ergesh be'lekut. To rejuvenate your sensitivity towards godliness, bigdulasai, in his greatness, ubachdusai, in his oneness, ubahava, elav yizborach, and avos Hashem. So therefore, that's why Chazal were masaking this. You know why? Because today, without real tefillah, we don't live bigdulasai, we don't understand achdusai, and we're definitely not living 24/7 ba'avosai. We're basically not fulfilling the first Ramah in Shulchan Aruch. The first Ramah in Shulchan Aruch is Shivisi Hashem Negdi Tamid. Your Shacharis is supposed to help you get there. Well, if that's the first Ramah in Shulchan Aruch, and that's the mitzvah of Anochi Hashem Elokecha Kemavur B'Sefer HaMitzvahs, and in the Ramban there, that's the Kiyum Din of Anochi Hashem Elokecha. That's why you have to have a Shacharis. Find yourself a good minyan. See you guys next time. We'll continue this. Bye. Okay. This was heavy. I'm sorry. Okay. Love you all, but this is important. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Think about it. Any questions? I'm open for phone calls. Bye. Take care. Bye. Kol tov. Bye-bye.